So my undergrad degree is in biology. I got it from Roosevelt University downtown Chicago. And then I applied to the Masters of Biology program at IIT, and I got in. And about 2 months before school was about to start, I think my mom noticed I was just kind of dreading going back to biology. Like I like science, but I don't like biological education, if that makes sense. It's like the content is interesting, the medium by which they deliver it really isn't. And she reminded me, she was like, when you were in first grade, like you really wanted to be an architect. And I did. I remember drawing pictures of like me and my friends on construction sites. So just on a whim, I applied to the College of Architecture and ended up getting in. And so I'm 2 years into, I'm doing a dual degree in landscape architecture and regular architecture. So 2 years in now, yeah, I'm making the switch. And people always like, two conflicting things like the opposites. But I mean, I think science and science and architecture have a lot of similarities where it's about like the repetition of an investigation, you know what I'm saying? Like being iterative in your design process is the same as running multiple experiments, you know what I'm saying, to gather adequate data and then being creative about what you produce from these patterns that you can pick up on. So it's just me talking about biological substances as opposed to, brick and mortar. So it's a cool transition.
All right. So let's talk about your program. Let's start with the basics, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us which school you go to, and tell us again, maybe start over. Tell us about your story. What led you to architecture? Start from the beginning.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm at Illinois Institute of Technology. It's the kind of architecture specifically. The campus is located on the south side of Chicago in Bronzeville, which is a very unique condition for a university, especially an architecture university. And I actually grew up in the community that the school is located in. My dad used to joke all the time, like, you should go to IIT. I'm like, I wouldn't go to college in my backyard. It's not happening. And sure enough, like he cursed me and I'm there. But I didn't have any ambitions to be an architect, from the time I went to undergrad. I really thought I was going to be a scientist. And then, like I said, at the very last minute, switched to architecture because I'm a painter. And I took time off to be a fine artist after undergrad. And I just didn't feel very fulfilled. I know I wanted to go back to school. So again, I went to apply for biology and I felt like architecture was a good medium between art and science. And so I'm doing the dual degree program, master's program. So it's a 4-year degree. It's a master's of architecture and a master's of landscape architecture. And I feel like the landscape architecture side of the degree is really piggybacking off of my biology degree. So there's a good one-to-one relation, but I also feel the things that I'm learning in both landscape architecture and in architecture is immediately applicable to the things that I want to see changed in the city.
Could you describe your program, your dual degree program, a little more in depth?
So, yeah, definitely. So the first year was about learning, because they tailored the program to students who don't have backgrounds in architecture. Also have a side of the program for students that do. So I was a student that didn't. So the first semester, our studio class was about learning the foundation of architecture, like all of those things, like a crash course of a grad degree. With that, we also took a visual communications class, design communications, learning how we can leverage different media to show architecture drawings and what information can be conveyed through that. So I think that was a very important class on showing about, it's not just about producing these renderings or making a building. There is messages and information that be communicated with different styles of mark making, and that has been greatly increased with technology. Then we also had, the traditional history course and a structures course that was really in depth too. So the whole first year of the program was really immersing you in all of the foundational aspects of architecture, from structure to drawing techniques to modes of communication, and then the history of architecture. So basically the entire first year. Then the second year that I just completed, I would liken studio to like an office environment. You are a little more independent because we're master's programs, and we have to learn to lean on the students who are in the excelled program. So in the first year, it's for the students that don't have a background in architecture. What is my second year is the advanced degrees first year, and we share a student. So we can lean on the expertise of the professors, but we also have, now classmates that are coming off of 5-year or 4-year undergrad degrees. So the ecosystem is very it's a good environment for learning because you can learn from your peers who have 5 years of knowledge on you, and you are also learning from experts. So if there's a disconnect in like what the professors are saying, you can get the same information in a different way from your peers, which I think is extremely important. And we also start talking about mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. So that having that also being taught after coming off the foundation of structure, the basis of architecture, like they do a really good job at stacking the information on top of each other through the program. So, and I'm also starting now my landscape side of the degree, which I'm really, it's like one of the complex degree programs. So I'm taking, here I just took my ecology classes. And again, it's about the fundamentals of landscape architecture. So we're figuring out how to identify and name different species of vegetation. We went to the Morton Arboretum in Chicago, or not in Chicago, it's near Chicago, but to really have an in-depth investigation of plant life and plant forms. And then the last semester of this year for ecology was about figuring out what type of architectural moves you can impose on the natural environment. So how to use a wall on a hill, for instance. How do you do a grading plan? Really laying the foundation. And I think that just speaks to the essence of I being a technological institute. It's all about figuring out like the details in the weeds and really proving to have that understanding.
So that's wonderful. You're bringing all these different disciplines together from your undergrad, and then
Right.
now you have this dual degree. I was wondering, where do you see your career taking you?
I don't want to practice architecture in a traditional sense. Like I've always like the metaphor I like to say is I would rather work for a studio as opposed to an office. But I also see that there are large communities of people that have been excluded from architecture and have also had their experience be a consequence of architecture. So specific people have been brutalized by architectures in plantations, in prisons, and in projects. These are three very important architectural interventions in American landscapes that have directly caused the detriment of other people. And so I want to investigate how that played out again in detail, and then what can we do to take that information and move forward. So I see myself in architectural education more so than architectural practice, because I think architecture is a tool to craft a frame of mind. Like I don't think I have to build satisfied because of all of the implications that if I just can influence the next generation of builders or a current generation of builders or a current generation of urban planners and constructors, we can work together and in them to create ecosystems that we want to see. I think the American ideology has always been to gain access to wealth via housing, and there have been large practices that have prevented people from engaging in that, and housing is indicative of architecture. So I think that architecture can be the tool to solve a lot of these problems. So that's where I want to go as a career.
Do you feel that your education at IIT is equipping you with what you need to achieve your aspiration?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because not only does IIT employ, people who are not only just very advanced in architectural theory, but have a lot of practice. Like the majority of our professors are practicing architects currently, and IIT's like urban situation is so unique, and I think it's so befitting for the frame of mind that I'm approaching architecture with, because IIT itself has a history of abusing its neighborhood. It's located in what was the black belt of Chicago. The Black Belt of Chicago is where all of the Black people were segregated during the 40s and the 50s when they were right after the New Deal. And Mies van der Rohe came to Chicago and destroyed a lot of housing in order to build IT campus. Now, people debate so many different aspects. Was it beneficial? Was it not? And I think that's a moot point. I think it's just a fact of the matter is that IT has a history itself of using architecture to displace communities. And now that they train the future of architects, it is imperative that we can recognize the faults of the past and be able to tell that story to influence a better future. And again, as a person of that community, and I've seen so many things and had a weird relationship with IT myself. I think it's just befitting for me to be in that context, and I wouldn't be able to have that experience or understand that at any other architecture school, simply because of the fact that IIT is literally an example of things that I want to change. You know what I mean?
So based on what you're saying, I would, imagine you studying, like if you didn't tell me that you were studying architecture, I would have imagined you studying urbanism or social studies or something like that. Why architecture? It seems like architects are not necessarily well equipped to deal with social issues as other disciplines.
But I think that we are. I think that architects are the most important people on the planet. We are, like, I don't need to go study urbanism, like a social study, because I live it. You know what I mean? Like, we are all a part of urbanization. We're all a part of society, whether we investigate it to its smallest detail or not. And we have a good general understanding. But I think the way that architects think, the way that they, like, in the influence that they really have, like, we are never outside of an architect's mind. In every moment of every day, the buildings that I'm in, the streets that I walk have been designed by other people. And that has profound implications as to how people change and grow and behave. Like, your environment is so important. So I think that architects have been really undervalued and overworked, and have been believed that they don't have immense power, and we do. You know what I mean? Like, there is no, like, we marvel at American cities, and we marvel at these global cities because of how beautiful their architecture is, because of the arrangement and the type of interplay that happens as a result of so many different architectural evolutions in places. So I think it's really, and again, it's about the frame of mind and not necessarily the practice. Like, architects just naturally think about things differently than a politician would, or a layman would. It's just specifically about the certain frame of mind. And I think architecture makes you logical, it makes you empathetic, and it can make you very like, you have a lot of ingenuity with an architecture in mind. And I think people need to explore that and really push those powers to the limit.
Can we talk about the people at your program now, the faculty and the students? Can you describe the role that they've played in your education?
Man, so I am, I've been in school my whole life, because that's just what they have, that's how we train Americans to do, is go to school. But I have never really meshed with teachers. I've always been like a rebellious student, because I don't like when education is used as a form of control. You know what I mean? And at IIT, the professors really treat you like a peer. You know what I mean? It's not about, I'm not trying to make you do, I'm not trying to make you be this person or make you understand this. I want you to be the best thinker you have. Like, the two most influential teachers I've ever had in my life, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, is Leslie Johnson and Joseph Outshore. Leslie was my first studio professor, and Joseph was my first design communication professor. And their two teaching styles were so guiding yet freeing. Like, they gave me the space in the room to explore architecture as I saw fit. Because, like, how do you really tell tell a biologist how he should look at architecture. You know what I mean? How do you really tell somebody how they should? All you can do is present the information, kind of help them walk where they walk. And I really love that freedom. And then but I also love the diversity of teaching styles and approaches to architecture, because the year after that, this year I did that. I didn't necessarily enjoy my experience in studios, but it was undoubtedly beneficial, because now I'm seeing another side of architecture that's like an office-like environment, where it's about, we have to get this done, and we can make compromises, and we can't be so, you know what I'm saying, imaginative in certain ways. Like, you have to get this built in a budget, and just understanding that too, that, there's different ways to approach this, and then like the quality of professors that they hire. The guy named Maurice Cox, who is like the city commissioner now, and he was responsible for turning Detroit around, is a professor at IIT and just gave a wonderful talk. So they do have a good curative process for getting professors, and that creates such a utopian environment. It feels like Crown Hall, and it's the way the building is laid out, just allows for students to feel like we have room to grow, but we also have somebody we can look towards if we don't know. And I really enjoy that.
What about the students?
Yeah, students, I think we are the most international college in the country. So we have kids from all over the place. Like, I've never met so many different kinds of people ever in my life. We have people from, 7 Asian countries, a handful of Middle Eastern countries, and like 4 different American cities, all in the same classroom. You know what I mean? Like, this is like in the diversity is that different. You know what I mean? Like, we have so many different pockets and so many different opinions to pull on. And then people are just good people. And it shows you, it's really comforting to know that cultures, we are all empathetic people. We're not disrespectful to each other. We don't tear each other down. It's really like a camaraderie amongst the College of Architecture students. And it's something I've never experienced before. It's something I've experienced before, 1, on the diversity, but 2, on how easy it is for people to just get things done together. You know what I mean? While being able to, still challenge each other. I think one thing I'm starting to realize, because you get it but it's hard to see in practice, is you can challenge somebody without it turning into a shouting match, without it being disrespectful, and it being very, very beneficial. And the students specifically, even at the youngest ages, like the 16 and 17-year freshmen, are very good at being able to monitor their emotions and be empathetic and tasteful to other people. Like, it's really weird to see.
How important is it to learn from each other as students?
I think that's probably the most important energy in IIT. It's like, the younger students talking to the grad students. Like, even me as a grad student, like, I was 23 when I started school. I was so much from the 10-year-olds across the hall from me. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel like, because we're like comfortable with each other, we understand and empathize with our current situations. And even, not to say that professors don't, but you always have that dynamic of a professor and a student, you know what I mean, which just mitigates how the relationship unfolds. But with peer-to-peer, as you see yourself as equals, it's easy for you to just be vulnerable and be confident, and knowing that people don't impose on that or infringe on that is crazy important. Like, the student body is so supportive of each other, and again, with giving good, like, intelligent feedback. Like, so not only is it, we're helping each other gain knowledge, but we're helping each other gain confidence, and we're building people as good people outside of even architecture. So superimposing how mature the student body is with how like talented these kids really are. Like, the ecosystem in Crown Hall is really nice, and it's largely about how the students relate to each other and how the professors support the students.
What's your day-to-day experience there as a student?
And this is one thing that this is one critique I will say. Like we have to like in Crown Hall, like there's like this culture of, and I think it's like architecture school in general. They have to like work themselves to death. You know what I mean? So day to day, like when I'm my first year, I was getting there at like 8 a.m., not leaving till 4 a.m. and coming back at 8 a.m. at night the next day. Like and the design of Crown Hall, so Mies van der Rohe made it like a giant open box in 2 floors, right? So you can hear everything. It's loud. Is you see paper flying and feet moving and bottles being built and broken, and you can hear when somebody drops it off a table. But so it's like it reminds me of what like a stereotypical Wall Street scene. Like when you see everybody on the calls reading the ticket symbols, and it's like chaotic like that. But once you are a part of that ecosystem, you find out how to move. It's like when you see those videos of people in India like driving, there are no traffic lights and there are no crashes. People are just flowing through each other. We got that kind of energy there. So like I've tailored and tamed my schedule this second year. So I get there at about 9 o'clock. I think we all respect studio as our most important class. So generally you see us working on studio projects throughout the day. Get there, work on studio. If it's a studio day, we go through studio and then studio ends. So that's really like a 9 to 5. Studio ends at 6. If we get in there at 9 and we working through studio, we're there, for good chunks of our days. Like I spend a lot of time in Crown Hall. A couple of the friends will go out and grab lunch, maybe at the student center, or go drive somewhere because we're all, pretty older. But a lot of time is spent in Crown Hall. Sometimes that's spent sleeping or, just sitting around watching Disney movies with the studio. But we're in that building all day, all day.
What things do you dislike about the program?
The toxic culture of if I don't die building this project, I didn't do enough. You know what I mean? And it's not even like teachers say that you do it like that, but it's kind of like this. I think, and again, it's like old age architecture, because I feel like people always felt like architecture was supposed to be like this sacrificial thing. I'm like, no, we can take care of our bodies and take care of ourselves and take care of our minds when we do this. You know what I mean? First and foremost, your own individual health as a human being is the most important thing. You can't do anything good for anybody if you're not taking care of yourself. So you're like when people are, working 27-hour project, I'm like, you are no longer doing good work. After hour 14 to 15, your hands are just moving. Like you have to go and eat and sleep and take a step back because you will refresh how you look at the project. And again, like these kids are crazy, so I can't really talk to, try to tell them how to do their work. Your process is your process, but that's what I don't like. I don't like that there's this culture of we are supposed to bleed, cry, and die for architecture school when it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that.
Can we talk a little bit about affordability of architecture school? What do you think about the high tuition of architecture schools? And what does that mean in terms of the different classes that attend architecture school?
Yeah, I think it's indicative of like the way people view architecture wrong. Like I think architecture school is so expensive because architects themselves are so underpaid. So there's not like much endowment going into universities, and these like architecture as a subject to teach, it's a lot. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot of funding. And I think it's not affordable at all, and it makes it really exclusive. Like the amount of debt I'm taking on with student loans, like I can't even like register that number. It's like a real thing yet. You know what I mean? Like, and I still have 2 more years to go. So
be more specific, in terms of the costs.
Yeah.
Loans.
Yeah. So IIT is, if you're including student housing, I think it's like north of $60K a year, which is absurd. You know what I mean? Like I got like $160,000 in debt already. You know what I mean?
Do you have financial aid or you pay?
Yeah, financial aid. Luckily, like I wouldn't have been able to afford an architecture undergrad, and they are really like killing these kids. And I talk to the student like some of these kids were working 40 hours a week on breaks and, you know, having to leave architecture school and going to work part-time. I'm like, you're 17, 18, 19, so you shouldn't be doing that. Like you have to focus on your craft for real. It's absurd that we expect students to do that and, you know, continue to rise tuitions every day. And not even talk about how much, that's not even including how much model making costs, how much, you know, software costs for these different programs we need to do our work. You know, and a lot of availability of those facilities on campus. So it is really predatory. It allows kids to fall into this Sally Mae Navient trap. And again, luckily I'm an independent adult, so they give me, you know, any dollar amount I basically ask for. It seems like every time I haven't had a single loan rejected, because they're not going to say, no, we're not going to give you this money, so you don't have to pay us a crazy amount of more back later. They're going to just give these away. Like, it's a catch-22. So like, I understand that this system is relatively predatory, but I have no alternatives to engage, because if I want to practice architecture, I have to go get this license. And the only way I can go get this license is if I pass this test. And in order to pass the test, I got to get the education. You know what I mean? So it's really, it's unfair, and that deters a lot of students. Like, and I think it's indicative of a larger systemic problem in our country. Like, IIT is in Bronzeville. They literally named Bronzeville because of all the Black people that lived there throughout history, right? Last year, I was the only Black student in the graduate program. Are you in one of the blackest neighborhoods in the city and you have one Black person trying to study architecture? That means that there is something systemically wrong with what is going on. Not to say that people are intentionally excluding Black people, but the tuition, the way people broadcast and market architecture, and just the way people feel like architecture may not be a do anything. Like, people think that I did a job with architecture. You know what I mean? Like, those three things working in conjunction with each other makes it so that in a Black neighborhood, there's only one Black student studying architecture at a college or at a grad program of 50, 60 plus. You know what I mean?
Most of the Black students that I've spoken with say that one of the main reasons why there are not many architecture students because they can't visualize themselves as architects, because they're not that many architects to be Black architects to begin with, especially Black women.
Exactly. And
do you know any Black women architects that study with you there, or not?
Yeah. So one girl one woman who taught me a lot. Her name is Nyla. She now works at David Ajayi Associates. A genius a woman. She is from Gabon, and, you know, just expert in architecture. You know, very much so a powerful Black woman, and I really appreciate her. There's another younger student, Avia. And then there are a lot, at IIT, there are a bunch of Black women specifically. And one thing you notice too is there is an allure and attraction to the African continent in architecture. Like, majority of the Black students at IIT are Black Africans from the motherland, as opposed to Americans. Like, it's me and I think three or four other Black Americans, but it's majority of the Black community at IIT come from Africa. So now I wonder what it is about, like, culturally is different. And I think it speaks to your point of them saying that they don't see themselves as architects, because if you come from Africa, you know, you see Black architects, you see African architects, but in America, we don't have that same thing. Like, I can name like a couple now. Amanda Williams is my favorite Black architect, but I came across her through her contemporary art. I didn't know she was an architect until I got to IIT and found out she used to teach there. But I came across Amanda Williams at a PA show where she was going through Inglewood, which is a kind of rough neighborhood in Chicago, and was painting abandoned houses the color of the color of products that something to Black people. You know what I mean? So I thought that was really dope. And then Theaster Gates isn't an architect, but he uses space as cultural generators. You know what I mean? So he bought an abandoned bank on the South Side for $1 million restoration project, but then converted it to a gallery. He also has like a library house and a sound house, and but he's not a formal architect himself. So I'm starting to see bits of Black architects, but you have to dig so deep. Like, you have to be in the know to know, and I think that's one of the super limiting factors.
If you were to list the things that we have to do to change that, what would these things be? What would the steps be that would lead to?
First, people in architecture have to really check their privilege, and it's because people still have inherent just racial biases, and they don't believe. I'm not speaking from a metaphor. I'm speaking from what I've seen. They don't really believe that Black people are meaningful designers yet. Like, so we are so on just somebody Black, we're not thinking about how we think about what's behind the skin. So first, people have to really change the way that they think about Black people, and that immediately leads to them now starting to recruit Black intellectuals. So the university should be sending representatives to Black high schools, Black high schools around the corner to get them interested. Like, there are so many like really good Black high schools right around the corner from IIT. So I'm not understanding why they're not seducing the students. And I think it's just indicative of architecture as a whole. Like, there has to be more outreach. Like, you have to show kids what you see, show kids what you want them to see. And so just introducing the idea of architecture to Black students, and that can be directly done in high school. Like, IIT, caveat, they do have a program called it's like the project pipeline, where they're trying students more involved in architecture. So IIT is actively, the College of Architecture is actively doing this, and this can be replicated elsewhere. Also, really allowing Black architects. So once you now check your census box, okay, do I have a Black architect in my firm? Yeah. Allow them to rise to roles of leadership, and allowing them to take on design, like tough design tasks, like regulating, the Black intern to just drafting, or, not allowing people to really have these meaningful manifestations. And then on the governmental level down to municipalities, there has to be funding to really allow Black designers to impose changes to the urban fabric. Like, the same way we give developments for low income housing and things like, we don't need income housing, we need higher income. And how do you do that? You give money to people who can do things in architecture. So you don't necessarily even have to give the Black community money specifically for a Black architect. But if you are giving the Black community money to build restaurants and build other infrastructure that you need, and then if the institutions are doing the work that I laid out earlier, then you naturally have people from these communities being the architectural leaders. You know what I mean? So it's like things have to happen on both ends. We have to see Black communities really be meaningfully invested in, like, not like your pity dollars, because that's the projects and the projects don't work. Because if you're focused on giving people low income housing or decent housing, that allows you to get away with, excuse my French, bullshit. So we really have to meaningfully want to elevate these communities and see the architectural manifestation, while simultaneously training the people of the community to see themselves as the builders. You know what I mean? To see themselves as the designers. I'm constantly walking past buildings that I can assume somebody that looked like didn't make. So I stopped even thinking about me being one of the people that can design or build something, right? Like, I think that's so important. Like, it's like we see ourselves in so many other roles, like people see themselves as, doctors and lawyers and athletes and, public service, because that's what we always see. We see it in television, we see it in the streets and everything. But if we start showing that picture of architects have power and you can do this, it's not like rocket science. It's not as hard as people try to make it seem to deter you from wanting to do it.
But a quick question there. When you mentioned investing in Black communities,
mm-hmm.
will lead to eventually uplifting the community, improving the environment to a great extent, and that will inevitably lead to gentrification. The gentries,
Right.
the vast majority of gentries are not black, so
Right.
that's considered a negative. When Harlem was developing, late 90s, early 2000s, the black community reacted to a lot of that type of investment, and later on, the Columbia development of the area around the west side of 125th Street. So, so you're saying invest in these communities and bring the black architects in, which will naturally lead to hiring black professionals. But on the other hand, it seems like there's reaction against that. So how?
Right, and I think that the reaction comes from the systemic exclusion of black people from having ownership, right? So right after the New Deal, the HOLC drew these redlining maps saying that they won't invest and won't give mortgages and won't get loans. Specifically, black people, like that, the status quo, but you couldn't do it legally anymore. So they had to package it in very weird and insidious ways. So gentrification now, 70 years, 80 years after these practices have started, is a result of black people being systematically removed from ownership. So not only are you depraving people, but now that you're kicking them out the little bit of thing that they have. So in order to address that,
just to intervene there, but you're mentioning something that was 70 years ago. Okay, so urban renewal began during the Roosevelt administration. Obviously, there was racism, systemic racism there. It was actually institutional racism. I understand that. But do you see the same thing happening now? Meaning that how exactly?
Yeah, it never stopped. And again, the projects just got torn down not 15 years ago. Right? So we see racism transforms itself in many different institutions. So now what we are focused on is the police brutality, but black people still get denied loans, still have to pay more for similar housing. A report showing that a house of similar standing, quality, and character in a similar neighborhood, if it's 50% black in a neighborhood as opposed to the exact same house in a white neighborhood, is worth $50,000 less. So the problem is, and the reason why gentrification is allowed to manifest as it is on this stage, is because the gentries, like you said, are usually white people. And that's because black people who have the ability to move in hoods and vitalize them too are excluded. I don't think gentrification as a concept is necessarily bad. It's the fact that it comes with the displacement and replacement is what makes it something to rise and stop. If we can both develop people who are already in the community and create space for more people to move in, I think that's a win for everybody. But gentrification plays out now because people who are in these loans and people who have the credit to build up these neighborhoods are people who aren't from there, because the people who live on the block that is now being bought to be torn down and buy a house has been systematically deprived of jobs, systematically deprived of access to capital, and systematically deprived of education, while being violently policed by the state. So you are literally putting people in an invisible box and letting them watch other people run free, and then come in and move them out of the place. So I think to the point that's why I said you don't necessarily have to give the money to black architects specifically, but you have to give people to people of the community who want to see things change. Like, everybody has ideas for how to make their community better. Not many people have the resources to do so. You know what I'm saying? And feel hopeless, like they can't attain them. And it feels like mental gymnastics in order to get here. Like, even like I still have not done anything meaningful for my community yet, like on a grand stage. I'm only 25 and I've been in school. But the fact that people look to me as if I am is, and feel like I've had to do so much to just get here and I still haven't done anything yet, is indicative of a horrible, large problem. You know what I mean? And so that's why I say the approach has to be on two fronts, socially, financially. Like, we live in a capitalist society at the end of the day, so money talks. but we also need to make sure that people are talking about the right things.